Well, it's my hope that you had a great night. My director is making me happy. I hope I'll manage to make you as happy this morning. Thank you so much for always keeping it TV47. Rise and shine. Let's take a look at what the day has in store for us. We have so much lined up for you. We'll be looking at what the papers detail this morning. We'll also be getting to what it is that my team has prepared, as well as to candid conversations as pertaining to these matters. This will be day 2 of the vetting process of the cabinet secretaries, and definitely right here at TV47 we'll be following these events to keep you up to tabs right from the time they begin and going all the way. Yesterday it was all about Musalia Mudavadi, all about Aden Duale, all about Justin Muturi, and not forgetting Alfred Mutua, as well as Alice Wahome. Lots of controversy, as well as lots of revelations that are coming to the fore to the people of Kenya, as this lady and gentlemen were vetted for respective positions that they have been picked for by the President of the Republic of Kenya, that is President Dr. William Samoei Ruto. Just how lucky will they be to sail through to get that clean bill of health on this vetting process is one thing that we seek to understand, even as we are having other faces then joining the committee today for the very same process. Before then, this is finalized and to be presented to the main house, and most importantly to the president for appointment. Just how many of them will be lucky out of the 22 as declared by the constitution? Certainly a question of wait and see, and the matters that came to the fore definitely we'll be looking at this morning, as well as we take a look at the moves that President Uhuru Kenyata then is making, not just in the country but equally in the African continent. Is he bracing himself to take up the global space, the African continent? Well, a question of wait and see, as well as we continue to look at the reign of President William Ruto. Later on also we'll be engaging our reporters that will be speaking to you in different regions, different counties, just to get to hear about what you have to say as to the new reign and so much more that is happening in the country. So make sure that you are part and parcel of this very important conversation. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47KE. It's always a pleasure taking you through this. My name is Linda Alela. Once again, the broadcast is Morning Cafe. The Standard newspaper front page, Millionaire Hustlers. This is pertaining to what it is that I speak of, that really was the vetting process, the vetting of cabinet secretaries, nominees, that started off to surprising revelations about their wealth generated from the various income streams that these lady and gentlemen have. That is from Musalia's 4 billion and to Wahome's 218 million, they said was earned from years of hard work. A story captured on page 4 and 5. Whether they are capable of justifying this or not, a question of wait and see. Whether this will be instrumental as to the making of that decision, as to whether they sailed through or not, as well, is a question of wait and see. But the irony of it all that got a majority of Kenyans shocked is the fact that they are propagating, or they are speaking of how they would want to push the common mwananchi to the next level, which then would be ironical, because from what it is that they declare as their wealth, definitely this is not your usual kind of person in terms of wealth. Well, definitely this is one of the conversations that has been making headlines from yesterday and walking into today, and definitely we expect to get more and more of these revelations until the very last day. That should be on the 28th of this process of vetting. Now, KPA downplays a congestion's claim for ship's dock. Well, that also is a story that has been captured on the front page and expounded on page 18 of the Standard newspaper. We're talking about KPA denying reports of congestion at port as more ships are set to dock. That has been captured right there, and 38 ships are scheduled to dock at the airport in the next about 14 days. And of course, a business boom has been attributed to a smooth political transition. Well, it's been a smooth one. At least everyone has given it that bill, saying that at least it's not been as tough as we've all expected for it to be, and definitely appreciating the fact that the previous government managed to accord us this smooth transition, as well Kenyans maintaining that aspect of peace. And 40 million SIM cards registered. Remember a story captured on page 24 that a majority of Kenyans as well were not so lucky having their lines, locked as upon that declaration by the CM that many, of course, took lightly, only to realize that they've been locked out of this process. But it is necessary that we all get registered to avoid such scenarios. Away from it, there's also a story that has been captured on the front page as to President Uhuru Kenyata's life after state power, and he decides to settle somewhere in Mara. Former President Uhuru Kenyata has started a new life, that is at the 1,000-acre farm in Olmogi. That is Logorian in Transmara, overlooking the Mara Triangle. The triangle boasts a variety of wildlife. A story captured on page 4. Also not forgetting the events of yesterday where he got to join the president of Nigeria and some activities down there, perhaps informing my question as to whether then he will manage to take up that space as one of the key figures in the African continent and perhaps engage hugely on the activities of Pan-Africanism. Sweet freedom beckons for Deputy President Gachagua. This is a story that is on the front page and it is hugely expounded on page 6 of the Standard newspaper. Just what exactly is it about? Haji asks for more time to review 7.5 billion DP Gachagua case, and the DP denied all the charges and claims that were politically motivated or that were leveled against him, saying that these ones were politically motivated, and the prosecution alleged the DP fraudulently to obtaining 7.3 billion through personal accounts. Just how this will be dealt with different, and whether this is indeed a reprieve is also a question of wait and see, as of course lots of controversy have risen up as to just what then the DPP's office is doing towards addressing the question of corruption. Definitely we'll be looking to see just how this will be received and just how then they'll be able to manage these cases. On the other side, the World Trade Organization predicts trade growth to slow next year amid crisis. That is, of course, a story that has been captured on page 7 on the financial beat, but most importantly, looking at the African aspect of things. Away from it, the front page of the Daily Nation is a little bit different, but then again, also speaking of the filthy rich hustlers, Kindiki, Ndungu, Chirchir, Jumwa, and Kuria are set to face the members of parliament today on this vetting process, but as well highlighting the events of yesterday. The first batch of the 5 President William Ruto's cabinet secretary nominees were vetted. Combined net worth of over 6 billion is what it is that they have, a significant amount of wealth for the people that will man a government head of state had in the campaigns said would be pro-poor. Just how able are they to be pro-poor? Then definitely a conversation that is happening right here in the country. Away from it is Gachagua's 7 billion graft case on verge of collapse as well. The same question that has been captured on the front page of the Standard newspaper, now as well on the Daily Nation. And politician accused of husband's murder detained as probe is continuing. Kiambu politician Gladys Chania has been detained for 7 days to allow the conclusion of investigations into the murder of her husband. This is captured on page 3. And on the health sector, or the health segment, 40% of adolescents suffer mental illness. This is according to a new study conducted, and more than 2/5 of Kenyan teenagers reported having a mental health problem, and 1 in 8 met the criteria for mental illness. That is a story that has been captured on page 2, as anxiety is said to be the leading mental health issue among these very adolescents. And in the space of more than 2/5 of Kenyan teenagers are the ones that are being reported to have mental problem. And of course, this is quite unfortunate report. Definitely also things, or statistics that has been as well conducted by the Ministry of Health. Definitely, we are called upon to address these matters of health and most importantly mental health, because then the cases are growing bigger by the day, begging the question just what really ails us as a country for our young tax to go through these tough moments. It's a mixed legacy for Kenya's elite police unit. This as well has been captured on the front page, and they speak of for about 70 years since the formation of the social branch of the special branch. Police continuously operates ad hoc units with mixed success, while they have been credited for making the streets safer. They have also been condemned for engaging in extrajudicial killings. That's a story captured on page 10. Just how safe are you with the next police person that is pretty much supposed to protect you amidst all these reports that we see today? Perhaps there needs to be, an overview of this to get to understand what informs these unfortunate reports. So on the other side, and that is the global fraternity, Nigeria floods toll has passed about 600. This is according to the minister down there of Nigeria, and that is the humanitarian affairs minister, Sidia Umar, who says that these reports are quite unfortunate. And remember, there have been cases of reports that have been reported in the sub-Saharan Africa, and even worse cases of drought, and leaves us wondering just what needs to be done, or what mechanisms should be incorporated to make sure that perhaps this water that comes from the floods then could be saved to address the questions of drought and starvation. But then again, such is being addressed at that very level. Authorities in Ribble held Tigray to respect ceasefire, and there is this growing concern after fighting resumed in August after a 5-month lull. And remember, there's been this conversation as to how best the African continent would come in to address the crisis somewhere in Ethiopia, and not just Ethiopia, but as well as Somalia, as well as South Sudan, and the numerous African countries like the DR Congo that are not in the best of shape in terms of enjoying peace. And the dilemma of our barrel bid and face tough options with Saudis, a story captured on page 22 of the Daily Nation as pertaining to the international scene. And Saudi Arabia's backers warned the US could drive into the arms of Russia or China. And OPEC oil cartel that is led by Kingdom announced a production cut of 2 million barrels a day. That is what we have on the papers this morning. Mr. Director, do we have the People Daily? Yes, we should be having the People Daily, and I'm certain that the People Daily as well is about these stories that are making headlines. Hustler CSS worth 6 billion, as you would rightfully see on your screens this morning. Mudavadi, the nominee for Prime CS, tops reach list at about 4 billion. And at first day of vetting for Ruto's choice for cabinet, then puts the candidates on the spot over their past conduct and suitability to hold public office. A story captured on page 2, 3, 4 of the People Daily. That's the main story this morning. Another story that has been captured on the front page: over 25 million callers switched off in SIM card listing crackdown. As well, I have touched on the same. Ukraine wheat cargo set to soften cost of bread. As well, story captured on page 15, and this then would cut across the global fraternity. And in the football bit, or in the sports world, Save Kenyan Football Club bosses appeal. That is a story captured on page 29 of the People Daily. It's not been all rosy on this very sector of sport in our country. We certainly hope that upon vetting and clearance, then the new CS for Matters Sports as well, then that is Babuna Mwamba, should be able to help us manage this very sector as per expectations. Now, let's shift gears briefly and take a look at these stories that have been prepared by my team away from the dailies this morning. We still have so much that has been prepared, and this as well touching on the vast matters that I have also picked. Definitely, let's pick this very same story that speaks of a different matter, and that is on the question of the SIM cards. There will be no extension of SIM card registration period again after the lapse of the registration period that ended on October the 15th. The Communication Authority says the exercise has been a success, as Collins Lusweti tells us.
Your SIM card will remain inactive and out of service if you fail to register as per the October 15th deadline set out by the Communication Authority. Speaking to members of the press earlier today, Director General of Communication Authority Ezra Chiloba termed the exercise a success, adding that there will be no additional time with unregistered lines remaining disconnected.
When we started that campaign early in the year, of course, we saw some progress in terms of activities and results, but then we suspended the activities until after the election. So we gave a 6 months window, and that date lapsed on the 15th of October, which was the day before yesterday.
Chiloba indicated that the authority will work with telecommunication companies to assist those who are unable to do the registration due to genuine challenges. He, however, put the telecommunication companies on notice, saying they will be answerable if an unregistered SIM card within their networks remain active.
So since the number is smaller, we've tasked them to do a mapping exercise to be able to identify these specific individuals, so that if there are people who have genuine challenges when it comes to registration, we can actually address those challenges and to ensure that they are properly registered. You cannot have an active SIM card that is not duly registered. So if an operator allows a SIM card that is not duly registered to remain active, then they must be able to answer for that.
93% of Safaricom subscribers successfully registered their SIM cards, with Airtel registering 81% compliance rate as of the end of the deadline day. The authority says the move will ensure trust transaction.
Companies such as Safaricom, who is a leading mobile service provider, has registered significant compliance rate, and here we are talking about 93% of all their subscribers are duly registered. And to me, that is significant. It improves trust when it comes to mobile transactions, that stakeholders can actually transact knowing very well that they are dealing with genuine individuals.
Kenyans who spoke to TV47 applauded the mandatory SIM registration move, arguing it will ensure safety of subscribers.
Kwa upande wangu naona kuna umuhimu wa kuhakikisha line ziko registered, kwa sababu Wakenya wengi ndio walicomplain wakasema fraud mingi ama utapeli unapitia kutoka kwa line za simu.
Nafurahia sana kwa sababu unaona watu wengi wameregister, kwa hao ambao hawajaregister waweze kufika Safaricom na waweze kuregister.
Collins Lusweti, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, Gladys Chania, the prime suspect in the murder of her husband, will remain in police custody for 7 days to pave way for police officers to conclude investigations into the incident. Meanwhile, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, has been given 3 weeks to review a 7.4 billion shillings corruption charge against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his co-accused persons, Sharon Baranga, with a roundup of what transpired in the corridors of justice.
Gladys Njeri Mwangi, alias Chania, the main suspect in the murder of her husband George Mwangi Kamau, had a date today with the Kiambu Law Courts. Gladys appeared before the courts alongside one of her employees, Maurice Mbogwa, who is also a suspect in the case. The two will remain in police custody for 7 days as investigations into the case continue.
Preliminary investigation conducted by the police shows that the suspects in court are linked to the murder. And Your Honor, there is a worker by the name, what is the name of the worker? Yeah, there's a missing person by the name John. He's only known by one name, John. He was living at the deceased house in Mangu, who is missing to date. And the presumption are that if the deceased was eliminated, he must have been eliminated too. So going by the nature of this case, it is complex. The 24 hours granted by the law is not sufficient. The matter was, they were arrested on Friday, and a lot need to be done in order for evidence to be gathered so that the person who is culpable is arraigned before this court to take plea.
Gladys and Maurice are being held at the Gigiri and Muthaiga police stations. Elsewhere, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, has been given 3 weeks to review a 7.4 billion shillings corruption charge against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his co-accused persons. Milimani Anti-Corruption Magistrate Victor Wakomile allowed the DPP's request to be given more time to review the graft case before giving directions on whether he will drop the charges against Gachagua and the co-accused persons. The DPP has been granted until 21st November 2022. In the case, Gachagua is charged alongside 9 others who include William Wahome Mwangi, Anne Ndutaruo, Julian Jahenda Maka, Samuel Murimi, Grace Wamboi Karaoke, Lawrence Kimaru, Irene Wamboi Digiriri, David Ruben, and a company, Rapid Medical Supplies.
Dated 14th December 1998.
Meanwhile, a former Foreign Affairs Ministry official has been charged in court with a 40 million shillings land fraud claim. Rose Jelagat Boit was charged that on unknown dates and place within the Republic of Kenya, jointly with others not before court, with intent to defraud, conspired to defraud Abdi Rashid Abdul Sharifo of a parcel of land measuring approximately 0.2 hectares situated at Karen within Nairobi and valued at 40 million shillings. It is alleged they forged a letter of allotment purporting it to be a genuine letter of allotment. Through her lawyer Ham Langat, the accused pleaded with the court to be released on favorable bond terms. Langat added that his client is a person of good repute and has worked in various countries in Africa. He pleaded with the court to find it fit to grant her a favorable cash bail. She was released on 300,000 shillings cash bail, and the matter will be mentioned on 31st November 2022. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
Now, a day after President William Ruto disbanded the DCI Special Service Unit, accusing the unit of using unorthodox means to deal with lawbreakers, a section of politicians and constitutional analysts have told off the president, saying he was misadvised. Some of them have said that the move will have immediate consequences to the country. The story was produced by Aisha Jumwa.
A move by President William Ruto to disband the DCI Special Service Unit on Sunday has elicited a number of reactions among Kenyans across the country.
Kwa na miaka mitano ambayo walitumia kuharibu mambo ya nchi yetu. Uchumi ikaharibika, tukawa na madeni, mambo ya usalama ikaharibika, polisi wakabadilika wakawa ni watu wa kuwaua wa Kenya badala ya kuwalinda. Tumevunja ile ilikuwa inaitwa special sijui nini ya police ambayo ilikuwa inaua wa Kenya kiholela. That is the history we want to forget.
According to some observers, the move by the president was wrong, with some saying that the head of state was ill-advised. While facing the Parliamentary Committee on Appointments during his vetting for the post of Attorney General, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, stated that President Ruto has the powers to make changes in the executive.
The president is the head of the executive. And it is quite in order for him to use what has been said by his cabinet secretary, maybe quietly, it is quite open to the president to say it publicly that that he has instructed for this to happen. Remember, indeed, he is the foremost spokesperson of the government.
On 27th September this year, President Ruto appointed Japheth Koome as the Acting Inspector General of Police after Mutiambai's exit, a move that raised a number of concerns on whether or not the head of state was well advised before making the appointments.
So that we avoid the shame of Kenyans killed through extrajudicial killings and put in Yala River and other rivers, we're going to secure this country going into the future. So I want to promise the people of Kenya that Kenya is on sound footing, and we have a plan that will take this country into the future.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has on several occasions accused the police service of using extra efforts to deal with law offenders, saying a massive cleanup must take place in the police service to bring sanity as soon as possible.
We cannot the mess, the economic mismanagement of 5 years in 30 days. What we are doing right now is cleaning their mess. And they cannot oversight us to clean their mess because they were part of the mess.
And Prime Cabinet Secretary and nominee Musalia Mudavadi has been put to task to explain the role of his position and its legality, despite the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula pronouncing himself on the matter, stating that the position is lawful. Oge William reports.
President William Ruto's cabinet nominees, led by Prime Cabinet.
This position is properly grounded in law and under the Constitution.
With the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, ruling that the Prime Cabinet Secretary slot was created lawfully and hence the committee shall proceed and vet the nominee to the slot, Musalia Mudavadi, in accordance to the House Committee on Appointments standing orders. Azimio allied legislators did not let the issue lie low, pushing hard for Musalia to defend the functions of the slot. Mudavadi was the first to appear before the committee.
The position to which you are being proposed or recommended or nominated is anchored on quicksand, constitutionally speaking.
So I'm wondering, how should a senior cabinet minister chair principal secretaries when you know that there is head of public service also who coordinates principal secretaries?
President William Ruto nominated Mudavadi to the position while unveiling his 22-member cabinet last month, sparking debate on the legalities of the position and its difference from the deputy president's post. Mudavadi taking his time to convince the committee on his role in Ruto's cabinet.
The fact that the president, constitutionally and in accordance with the Coordination Act, has the powers to set up his government.
The question of the Building Bridges initiative also came up during the vetting exercise, following the creation of the docket to be held by the former ANC leader, evoked by the August House.
Consistently, you said that the Handshake brothers were hell-bent on creating positions instead of dealing with the obvious things of high cost of living.
When I was at the Bomas of Kenya, at one of the public functions, I did highlight that there are some good things in that document, and there are also some toxic things in that document.
In the Executive Order No. 1 of 2022, Mudavadi will assist President Ruto and his Deputy Rigathi Gachagua in coordinating and supervising government ministries and state departments, work closely with the Ministry of Interior to oversee government policies, programs and projects, coordinate government legislative agenda, chair the principal secretaries' committees, and supervise the technical monitoring and evaluation of government policies, programs and projects.
I believe that we have not breached any law. And when we talked about looking at the Coordination Act was in the context of strengthening that Coordination Act and not necessarily saying that it is an impediment.
Cabinet Secretary's vetting exercise by the 15-member Committee on Appointments kicked off Monday and is chaired by the Speaker of the National Assembly. The exercise runs through to Saturday, October 22nd, with the exception of Thursday, October 20th, when the country will observe Mashujaa Day. Oge William, TV 47.
And the 5 cabinet secretary nominees got a chance to disclose their net worth as they hope to take over government positions pending approval by the National Assembly's Committee on Appointments. And as Mike Agungo reports, the nominee for Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has placed his net worth at 4 billion shillings, while former Speaker of the National Assembly Justin Muturi says his net worth is 700 million shillings. Have a look.
When the files were opened Monday morning to scrutinize cabinet secretary nominees, some Kenyans were shocked after learning the amount of money and assets the nominees own, even before they are handed the lucrative positions in the Kenya Kwanza government.
Would you tell this committee your financial net worth?
The first nominee to appear before the 15-member National Assembly's Committee on Appointments hot seat was former ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, who said his net worth adds up to 4 billion shillings.
If I take my investments in shares in various in some companies and also the properties that I own, I would put my net worth at about 4 billion shillings.
He added that his current and anticipated income is from rental income, dividends from shareholding, interest and other expenses that comes from the farm.
Rental income, dividends, where I have the shareholdings, and also interests, and of course other expenses that come from the farm.
Mudavadi was nominated by President William Ruto as one of his CSs following the agreement that the ANC and UDA signed before the August election. If Mudavadi, who served as Deputy Prime Minister during the coalition government of former President Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga sails through, he will be the senior-most official in government after the President and Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Attorney General nominee Justin Muturi said his net worth is 700 million shillings.
My net worth is currently estimated at just about 700 million.
Last year in November, the former National Assembly Speaker revealed he had a net worth of 300 million shillings. Muturi made the revelations on Twitter on November 18 during a question and answer session with Twitter users. He said he made his money through businesses funded by his salary from civil service and bank loans.
I am now a pensioner, a retired speaker, and expect that I should be governed, whatever I get from the public coffers should be governed by the Deputy President and Designated State Officers Act.
Muturi says he owns commercial property that has pushed his net worth to 300 million shillings mark.
If there are copies...
Cabinet Secretary nominee for Defense Aden Duale has disclosed that he is worth 851 million shillings. Speaking when he faced the National Assembly Committee on Appointments, Duale said the assets include 231 camels, sheep and goats.
Chair, I'm worth 851 million Kenya shillings, including the assets I own, including the goats and the sheep and the camels.
The Garissa Township MP additionally disclosed that he makes 10 million shillings annually from his rental property. If approved, the long-serving legislator will resign to take up the CS role in President William Ruto's administration. Duale is as well seasoned politician, having first won elections in 2007 general election in Dioge's constituency seat on an ODM ticket, to soon become the first Northeastern MP to be appointed Assistant Minister in the Livestock Ministry. In 2013, he was appointed as the Majority Leader of the National Assembly, but he was forced out in 2019 in the aftermath of the fallout between former President Uhuru Kenyata and President William William Ruto, who was his deputy then.
Alfred Mutua ni nani?
Foreign Affairs CS nominee Alfred Mutua said he is worth 420 million shillings.
Approximately 420 million shillings.
Mutua said the assets include hotels, businesses and a few apartments. Before he became Machakos governor, his financial worth was about 200 million shillings.
I talk about the worth of the hotel because it is still under ownership of, it is on loan. So when you own something that is under huge credit, it's very hard to say that it is yours unless you've cleared the credit.
The final nominee to be vetted Monday, Kandara legislator Alice Wahome, said her net worth adds up to 218 million shillings and her gross worth is 392 million shillings.
The others are debt, yes. My net worth is 218 million. And this is a value of properties between myself and my husband.
The amount, she said, is the value of properties shared between herself and her husband, whom they have been married for more than 30 years. Mike Kagwongo, TV 47, Nairobi.
On your nomination as cabinet secretary.
Now, ghosts of the past came to haunt President William Ruto and his nominees on the first day of voting at County Hall. Cabinet nominees Musalia Mudavadi, Justin Muturi, Aden Duale and Dr. Alfred Mutua were taken to task for their alleged involvement in past scandals and decisions they made while in office. This as nominees faulted decisions made by President Uhuru Kenyata's administration while setting their agenda if approved to serve. Apollo Kamau reports.
President William Ruto's cabinet nominees, led by Prime Cabinet Secretary nominee Musalia Mudavadi, faced their ultimate test on the road to forming Kenya Kwanza's administration before the Committee on Appointments. Mudavadi, the most experienced of the cabinet nominees, was taken to task on Kenya's infamous scandals, Anglo leasing and Goldenberg, and whether he illegally acquired a property in Nairobi's Woodley estate.
To put it on record here, that the ethics or the Kenya anti-corruption body at that time went on a tangent that they had not verified the facts. I ended up also seeking legal redress for defamation on their part and for them having given out misleading information. Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman, as we speak today, the same property belongs to the county government of Nairobi and we pay rent.
There were light moments after Suna East MP Unet Mohammed questioned Mudavadi whether he was happy with his proposed new office located at Nairobi's railway headquarters. This as Mudavadi defended his role to coordinate government affairs. President William Ruto's Attorney General nominee Justin Muturi, while defending President William Ruto's decision to disband the DCI Special Service Unit, vowed to redeem the AG's office, but faced questions about his past when he served as a magistrate. Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Dr. Alfred Mutua was also taken to task on his conduct as the governor of Machakos on whether he misappropriated funds meant for Maruba Dam. The former Machakos county chief was also questioned about the purchase of county vehicles and pending bills in Machakos County, totaling more than 2 billion shillings. Mutua telling the committee that if confirmed, his first overseas trip will be in Saudi Arabia in the company of detectives to investigate the plight of Kenyan women working in the Gulf country. Defense CS nominee Aden Duale was tasked on remarks he says was misquoted on regarding naming suspects behind the Garissa terror attack and overseeing the controversial passage of the Security Laws Amendment Bill in 2014. Duale faulted President Kenyata's administration for allegedly militarizing the public service. The final nominee to be vetted, Alice Wahome, was also put on the spot for her temperament issues due to an altercation between her and IEBC officials in 2018, terming the event regrettable. Apol Kamau, TV 47.
All right, thank you, Apollo Kamau, for that very story that as well forms the basis of our conversation. It's largely and hugely about these, vetting processes that will take center stage for the better part of this week, and we'll definitely be following up on the same to make sure that you are up to tabs. A majority of matters coming to the fore, and we ask ourselves whether then we have the right faces to take up the mantle and to help the president then oversee and most importantly execute his mandate as the President of the Republic of Kenya. This is what we'll be discussing this morning alongside the guests that I have on a set, as well as other matters. And most importantly, we continue to look into the reign of the current regime. Honorable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, is with us this morning. And Honorable Martha Wangari, you must forgive me for not starting with you. They say ladies first, yeah? Yes, Member of Parliament of Gilgil, thank you so much for creating time to be with us. The first time on Morning Cafe.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it's an honor to have you. It's a red carpet, I'm telling you. Don't even joke, yeah? Mheshimiwa will tell you, he's a household member.
Yeah.
That it's quite an interesting set, also to speak. And most of the times, we dedicate our mornings to discuss matters that are of importance to the people of Kenya. And therefore, as we speak of the people of Gilgil, very, very important that we view this as to the lenses of the country at large. Perhaps to say jambo to the people of Gilgil. I don't know whether those ones like greetings as those ones from Western.
You have to. It's a tradition. And I think it's a Kenyan tradition. Really.
Yeah.
I think we have gotten the fever from the Western people. So I'm delighted to be on this set. Of course, allow me to say hi not only to the Gilgil people, but also to Kenyans, wherever they are watching. I think the fact that Honorable Gakuya is a household name here, then it is the right place to be.
It is.
So I'm delighted to be here and to make my inaugural appearance here. And I'm looking forward to a robust discussion. I think we're in a very interesting time in terms of our country and where we are at. And I mean, now Parliament is settling down. We are now settling down on the executive side. The judiciary is set. So we have a whole entry that is full to actually awaiting execution.
That's true, and Kenyans are looking forward to see what the 13th Parliament then has in store.
Definitely.
In another world, you should have been a journalist. You have a very nice voice, I must admit.
Thank you very much. I think that's why I was able to really ask for votes and get it.
Clearly, that's what, technically that's it, because, the ground can really be tough for women.
It is tough, but it's also a very interesting time for women. Allow me to say that because I was in last Parliament.
Yes.
We were 22 women elected in the single member constituencies. Now we are talking 29, we are 10%. We are still slow and sure, but it is an interesting time, not only in the Parliament side, but also in the judiciary. I mean, we have seen a CJ who is a woman, a DCJ who is a woman, a chief registrar who is a woman. We are seeing a cabinet donning quite a number of women, so it's a very interesting time for women.
An upward trajectory, and we appreciate
we
that.
are hoping it gets better.
We are appreciating the fact that
I think
I know we're almost locking you out from this conversation.
Our county has done very well.
Nakuru girls.
Yes.
Let's appreciate Nakuru girls for
definitely.
a moment.
Because having a governor, having a senator, a women rep definitely who is a woman, 4 constituencies led. Wow. I think we have set the pace and the place to actually go for benchmarking for women.
That's true.
And 3 out of those women have been re-elected a second time. Personally, I'll be serving a third term in Parliament. Honorable Jane Kihara will be doing a third term.
Yes.
Honorable Kathambi a second one. And now we have a new one actually now in Bahati. And I think the trajectory is just hopeful. For
and as well, we could say Susan as well has been re-elected.
Definitely.
Because now
as a speaker, as a senator, and now as a governor.
Yes.
So I think we have made the benchmark to quite some point for the other 46 counties.
I wonder what it is that you eat in Nakuru County. But then again, we appreciate that trajectory that you set for the girl child.
Yeah.
It's not been an easy one, but we definitely appreciate. Do you suppose that at some point then we're going to have this conversation of the 2/3 gender rule again surfacing in Parliament?
I believe since the head of states has ruled that that 2/3 has to be, I still think that most are coming back to house.
Right.
But I'm not very sure whether you'll be able to persuade the members still to get into it.
Right.
I think the best way to go is that natural way. The way that the Nakuru,
the Nakuru style, really.
But
you have been Parliament.
I want to say something because I was in 11th Parliament. We tried to enact this law in 11th Parliament. I was a senator then. We tried last parliament. I can tell you, when that bill is on the floor, these guys run away.
We turn out to be different people.
We have them in the house, but when the motion comes, they're outside.
There's no quorum.
Very few would be able to actually stay on. But I think the issue of the natural way is a mirage, because some of us, if I had not come through an affirmative seat, it's not easy to be elected as an average woman out there. And I say that because I was a nominated senator, I was able to run for election, and I was able to defend. Right now, we have 7 governors who are women. If you look at their history, including Honorable Cecily, she was nominated, including Honorable Kawira of Meru, was a women rep, which is also an affirmative seat. We are now reaping the benefits of affirmative seats. So it is possible to achieve, but this natural way will be very slow. What I always say is that if we have an affirmative seat, including the women rep position, serve for 1 term. If you're nominated, serve for 1 term, run. And I had a nominated senator in 11th Parliament who ran for a ward in Kakamega. She's called Senator Godliver Omondi, and she ran on a wheelchair, and she was elected MCA. Because how else do we raise the numbers? Let us also agree as women that we have a concession that you do 1 term as an affirmative seat, then you run.
Then you let
even the women rep, we agree, we'll give and take, that they help us enact the 2/3 gender rule, but we also put a ceiling on how many times you can run for affirmative seats, so that we also give other women a chance to run. And I say that because when I started to run for Gilgil, people came, delegations to my house, that if you take the women rep, we'll give you.
But this other one, please don't touch. Okay.
So I think if we get a way of getting a middle ground, that we also give a bit, so that we say, women, when you get an affirmative seat, 1 term, run for election, whether it's an MCA, whether it's an MP or a governor, it is possible. Gladys Wanga was a women rep, has now become governor for Homa Bay. Mishimboko was a women rep, now MP. Same to Rueda Captain in Lamu, was a women rep, now a member of a single member constituency. It is gradual, but this affirmative seat can be used to breed and be able to incubate
other
leaders.
All right, and I'm glad that you bring us into this very space. Before we get into the aspect of this, why do you suppose it's becoming very difficult for us to outrightly achieve the 2/3 rule, and why is it that we really want to squeeze and literally choke off the affirmative action aspect, especially when it speaks about the women? First of all, do you think they have proven themselves enough and good enough, for instance, the women representative seat, so that we could confidently say as a people, you know what, these women really deserve to occupy their seats?
One thing, leader, let us agree that in fact the power belongs to the people, and that is where the sovereignty stands, and the mandate is given by people. So I still believe, in fact, that we are still going it well gradually, that the numbers are still increasing. It's only that actually in our tradition, most of in the society, it was that feeling that probably the women gender factor in most of the communities, like Maasai and some of those communities, it was tough to have a representative that actually who is of that gender.
Yes.
But gradually, people are changing their attitudes, and communities are changing their culture, and therefore adopting this particular gender. I have seen in Maasai we had 2 number of elected women, and you can see Kikuyus are doing well. That means that actually have already adopted it. But what I can say, leader, is that in fact, if we can allow the voters to decide, that's the best way to go about it. Because one thing, these positions that are given almost like free positions are not sweet. Are not sweet. Let us agree on one thing. When you really represent, like now, the manner in which my colleague is representing, he feels that he's somebody, because actually he's answerable to the people.
But just who is not making this position sweet? I am told that as nominated members, and I've seen them here complaining that sometimes the members of the House can really be terrible and tough on them. Is that what you speak of when you say that now when you go there and say that I have the mandate of the people, then you're allowed to speak, you appear as though you're a member of Parliament? Because
one thing, leader, let us agree. immediately you becomes a member of the House, no matter which way you have, whether you have come nominated, whether you come went to the election, you become a member.
You know, I have had someone silence Honorable Sankok, telling him, Sankok, don't even say anything, you're a nominated member of parliament. And it was a member of parliament.
But he was equally nominated. He cannot be nominated.
And therefore, then it is the fellow members of parliament that have been elected that are making life difficult for these ones that are nominated. And when you speak about the people, Mheshimiwa, my assumption is that this space of affirmative action has been accorded, by the people themselves, acknowledging that we come from a society that is largely patriarchal. We come from a society that overlooks the vulnerables. Those are the women, the persons with disability, the youth, and therefore we need to create this, a safe space for them to be able to be incubated, like Mheshimiwa speaks of. And so this then is out of the blessing of the common mwananchi. So how can you say that this is a position that is not accorded to these ones that are nominated by the members of by the common mwananchi?
Really, I am not really castigating that. In fact, that gender or that nominated, that nominated side of the fact is not a clear way of striking balance. But what I'm trying to say is that, in fact, the power and the mandate to elect is still back to the Mwananchi.
Okay.
And once you are elected, as whether you are either gender, you represent. Because you cannot stand here to say that because you are elected a man, you don't represent the interests of women, young people, and everybody else. Even when she is elected as at her gender, he represents men and the rest. So let us agree that actually there is no vacuum.
Okay.
There is no side that actually is not well covered for. It's only that we want just to fulfill the constitution mandate.
And when we speak about the constitution, roughly as we close on this one, because I realize it's a Pandora's box, it's been even at the level of parliament, do you foresee a scenario where, again, the current CJ is going to offer an advisory to the president, perhaps to dissolve parliament for failing to achieve the 2/3?
I still believe that actually there's a long journey to arrive to that point. But let us allow this particular House to see how it will perform. Well, maybe probably the head of state will go to persuade the members to at least get it a notch.
Okay.
But I'm still finding a mountain on it.
And I think, one thing I agree with Mheshimiwa is that when you're elected, you represent all groups, definitely. And the power of the constitution is exactly what brings in the special seats, what we call special seats. And by the way, they're not even called nominated in the constitution. They're called elected under special interest and under party list. So I think when you get to parliament, like he says, you are rightfully there. But I've seen it when special seats members are also given are at a disadvantage than the others who were elected. And I say that because when I got into the Senate, I remember the MCAs who were elected went on with business without the nominated or the special seats one coming onto board. And that was my first bill in parliament that we amended to ensure that all the members are sworn in. Because by the time the special seats, the nominated ones came in, committees were taken, the deputy speaker was elected, all the good committee elections were done. They had nothing to really bargain on because they were seen as a lesser MP or lesser MCA. But I think with time, it has also grown. But I agree also with Mheshimiwa on one thing. Political goodwill. If we have political goodwill from the president, this law will pass. And I think if we had that even in the last parliament, it would have passed. Because we passed even more controversial bills.
Yes.
I mean, we passed the issue of political parties, we passed the Finance Act that was very heated and it still got the numbers. So I think if we have the political goodwill, like the president has already committed with the women in this country, this law will be an issue of the past. We don't even need to wait for the Supreme Court to declare because it is the right thing to do. Because by the time we inaugurated our constitution, we put that requirement there for a reason. And we put it because I normally give an example of watching a match in Nyayo Stadium. Mheshimiwa Gakuya is taller than me. Definitely. Yes. So if there is one crate to step on, it cannot go to Mheshimiwa Gakuya. It will go to me.
Come to you.
So that I am taller to get a bit to his height. So I hope that we all see that this issue is not just about women. It is about a whole generation. It's about 50% of the country. And to correct issues of patriarchy that have been there for years, it will not take one day. It will take some time, but eventually we will get there. But I always tell them to always remember they have daughters who want to be members of parliament. And I can tell you, almost half of us who have been through affirmative seats are now able to run for elections, because first of all, you get the power of the microphone. Forget even the resources. You get the power of the microphone. That when you go to a function, by the virtue of you sitting in a special seat, you are able to get a microphone. Then you can be able to articulate your plan and your policies for people to see like women can be leaders. And I think that is exactly what the women reposition has done. It has profiled women to be able to be seen as leaders, not just as women, to be seen as leaders. That is why you're seeing even the communities that were very conservative, the Merus never used to elect even member of parliament or MCA who is a woman. Now we are talking of a governor. We have Naisula in Samburu, 2 termers. So I think it is slowly getting to the minds of the people that we look at you as a leader and as a woman. But I agree with him, when you're elected, I cannot say I represent women only. Sometimes even more men will vote for you than the women when you're the woman.
That one as well is one thing for discussion.
Also, the likes and dislikes.
The dislikes. And they say we are our greatest enemies. I don't know whether it's
not
true
really.
or not. But
I think we are part of the patriarchy because we have grown up in a society knowing my dad is in the living room, reads the newspapers, my mother is fending for the family. We have grown in that situation. So you also cannot just remove us in a day. But I think in this debate, political goodwill, if we get that from the president, then it will be very easy to actually achieve it.
Kevin Karato is watching and says, Linda, please tell my friend Honorable Gakuya that the gender factor is non-negotiable. It was envisioned by the maker of the Constitution for a very good reason. Political good.
The maker of the Constitution would be somehow wrong. Really, yes. Only what we can say is that if things become difficult, we can still take it back to Wananchi for another public participation. Well, then they can give their view.
To review the numbers.
I believe, even when we come to these votes, I have been always castigated by my women voters not to allow.
Is it?
So what do I do?
What do you mean?
Yes.
Back at home, they tell you, please do not allow for this to sail through.
So I do what? And I represent.
We should be
This is it.
Okay, wait a minute. Allow us to introduce our Honorable Duncan Maina, Member of Parliament in Nyeri Town, who joins us this very morning. Of course, his submission on the very same matter, and also to appreciate that he's one of the few people who flowed down one of the strongest candidates that you perhaps would never have expected.
He's a strong man.
He's a strong man. We have to acknowledge that. Just like the women that have managed to get into these positions, certainly he's a strong one. Honorable Duncan, thank you so much for creating time.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to appear with you this morning. And I bring greetings from Nyeri. I left Nyeri early this morning.
Oh, thank you.
And again, thank you for the compliments about my win. And really, it was not my win. It was the win for the people of Nyeri Town constituency, that they decided they thought they wanted somebody else to represent them. Of course, for me, it's been a dream come true because I have pursued the elected position for the last 15 years. I got elected on my 4th attempt at the seat.
So there was still room for Baba, in as much as we all kept telling
I was the Baba of Nyeri.
You were the Baba of Nyeri Town, yes.
However, even as I was the Baba of Nyeri, I have consistently presented a different agenda for the constituents. And my win, I believe, is a win for very many people who have dared pursue their dreams over time, who have refused to give up, even when the odds are staked much higher, like happened during these elections, in terms of the member of parliament, the previous member of parliament, who was, well, if I would put it that way, retired President Uhuru's #1 hawk. But the people of Nyeri decided that they needed a person that they could connect with a little bit better, a person who seems to understand them a little bit more deeply, and a person whose character, conduct, and ideas they have listened to and heard over time. They wanted somebody who is really a little bit more closer to their hearts, their needs, their aspirations, and their determination. If I can weigh in on the debate on affirmative action seats and the gender parity seats, there is always the question as to whether the crafters of the Constitution really got it right in terms of what the rural woman, the village women, because at that time, the gender is neutral, but at that time, it was supposed to empower our women more in political leadership. And our women have always been leaders. If I go to my village, I have this lady who has always led the local women's group. Yeah. And they have done a lot in terms of improvements in the local community, in the homes, in the households. And we have women in leadership in churches. We have women in leadership in every other position. In Nyeri, right from as a young person, I can remember the likes of Grace Wanyeki as a nominated councillor. So they have always been there. But at the national level, there was need to purposefully elevate the role that women play in our leadership. To me, I would not look at it as an incubation. I actually look at it as mentorship. Okay. And if we agreed to approach it from that level, then you begin to realize that even men need affirmative action in terms of us, me, and Honorable Gakuya, mentoring other young male leaders. And if we took it from that perspective, I think the debate will change. And what the Honorable Member for Gilgil is saying, then even political goodwill starts to build on the basis that this is a platform for mentorship. Every person in this country would benefit from mentorship. As I have entered Parliament for the first time, I can see I need mentorship. And one of the examples is when last Saturday, I was invited to accompany both the president and his deputy to Kirinyaga. Right. That was mentorship. The time, the short time that I spent with the deputy president and the small team that accompanied him, and with the president, as the team from Kirinyaga negotiated about what they need done around this mega project, that was mentorship. I was for the first time able to sit in a setting and listen in without contributing to a high-level team that had 3 governors, that had 3 senators, that had 6 members of parliament negotiating for their people.
And that really should not be locked out of the boy child as well, like you read.
It shouldn't.
Allow us to take a quick short break, Mheshimiwa, and then come back, expound further, not necessarily on this matter, because I realize then this one will not end. So after this break, we come and shift gears to a different one.
Stories. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday. Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday. Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands. Every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie.
And Betty Ndongori is asking, should the affirmative action seat be defended, then seeing how it should be a platform to elevate women? That's a question, definitely a couple of us that are watching from different parts of the country. And let's shelve that one, because really it will find its way in Parliament sooner than you expect it. And we're looking forward to see just how these members of Parliament are going to debate on the matter. The 13th Parliament, perhaps you've been watching from the peripheries, Mheshimiwa, and finally you're part and parcel of it. They say we should look forward to the best. I do not know whether you're positive that with your contribution and now the face of the 13th Parliament, that we are going to get quality debates, because that's our greatest fear today. That is our biggest question today. That the 12th Parliament was labeled as a parliament that really wasn't as functional as expected, a parliament that was, being coerced by the executive, a parliament that did not have quality debate, a parliament that really did not execute its mandate as we would have expected. Do you see a scenario where we're going to have a different one, a stronger one that is not, interfered with by the executive or any other forms or any other bodies outside?
I believe that the 13th Parliament, despite the myth associated with the number 13, is going to distinguish itself in several ways.
Okay.
To begin with, the 12th Parliament was not just captive to the executive, it was also captive to the opposition. Because we saw the opposition, the opposition lines and roles get completely obliterated after the handshake between the leader of the opposition then, or the leader of the minority then, and President Uhuru Kenyata. I believe the current Parliament will understand and appreciate, and it has really started to demonstrate that we understand and appreciate that we are the third arm of government. That we have our role as an independent arm of government. And independence does not mean that we have rigid lines where we stand. We are all interrelated, interconnected, and we need to have across the divide connections. We all need each other in a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
The first thing that should happen, and is beginning to happen in the 13th Parliament, is that parliamentarians are beginning to call for the dignity of Parliament as an institution. If you have something against President William Samoei Ruto, please go to his office, go picket outside Harambee House. Do not attempt to come and picket inside the Parliament. If I have something against the leaders of the minority party, I should look for their offices and go and picket, go and make my point outside the doors of their offices, not in Parliament. Because then, instead of playing my role as a registrator and as a representative of the people, then I become a gun for hire to come and push interests that are beyond Parliament. I am convinced that the new mix of first-time legislators and the seasoned legislators, like my two colleagues here, is going to strike and has shown that it is able to strike the kind of balance needed for the 13th Parliament to differentiate itself, not just against the 12th Parliament, but any other Parliament that has preceded us.
Right.
The minds that I see, the approach that I see, even from the seasoned politicians who are by the way, in equal measure present, both among the majority and the minority, I can see a greater sense of maturity. The decision about who is the minority and the majority, for me, seems to have set the tone of what will happen. That even when we do not agree 100% on the decisions in Parliament, we agree to go to the other arms of government that have been vested with the power to arbitrate when we have fundamental differences.
And you know, we look at the level of sycophancy that has been witnessed, and sometimes there's that general feel that this would overpower you know, the noble minds that we have in Parliament today. And early warning signs and fears have dictated that there are possibilities that these ones that are sitting in the House could really literally be captive of the executive. Can you confirm and affirm to us that with a few sessions that have been conducted, that such is not likely to play, and we see what happened in the 12th Parliament and we treat that with a lot of fear as a people, and we ask ourselves, can people, you know, overpower, can people that are sit in Parliament then overlook the aspect of sycophancy and represent the people, represent the voters with the same might that Honorable Gakuya speaks of when he says that go back and seek the mandate of the people, do not seek much of affirmative action?
I think what I will be looking forward to in this 13th Parliament is that we also understand the place and the role of Parliament. Yeah. And if there is something the President has been very keen, even in our parliamentary group meetings, is that you will let Parliament work. Because we have the mandate of the people from Article 94 to 98. It has the roles of what we can do and what we should do for the people. And even the power that we wield, it is not our power. It is really delegated under Article 1. It is by the people. I think what I'm looking forward to, I will agree with Honorable DMM is that in that we have a very interesting mix this time. We have very interesting numbers in terms of even the opposition. And the President is clear that we are not going to kill opposition. The opposition place is also known. Yes. So that we are also having balances and checks inside Parliament. And I also look forward to a Parliament that is a chamber of debate. Because we have had instances where, I mean, we have thrown jabs, we have thrown, we have even degenerated to something that my child I'll be embarrassed if my child is watching. I'm hoping that the settlement of the majority and the minority debate was the right start. And I said it in my first address to Parliament this time, that let us become house of debate. We don't have to always agree. I don't have to walk out to give a press outside there, and yet I was inside the House where I can actually give a contra review. And I think both sides have shown that we will be a chamber of very interesting debate. It will be very interesting to see that the first timers this time are very active, by the way, because we are generally a very young Parliament in terms of demographics. Very young people who have very good energy to inject into Parliament. So I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of quality debates. We'll have a lot of, we may not agree always on the issues, but at the end of the day, we'll have a consensus or rather a convergence point in Parliament. I also hope that this Parliament, because we are the center of this government. Anything, even the executive, in the manifesto or what we call the Kenya Kwanza plan, touches on Parliament. Because when you talk housing, when you talk even universal health care, when you talk NSSF, if it has to be restructured, it has to come to Parliament. And by the way, nothing prevents us from inputting what we think is what will make this better. Right. We have the liberty and we have the mandate. And by the way, whatever is passed in Parliament, most likely will get the assent of the President. So for us, it is to look and represent our people, even in the laws that come from the executive. Nothing prevents us from putting things that will work for the people. And I think if we know that, whether you're from the majority or from the minority, then we will definitely be a voice of the people at the end of the day, because that is why we are in Parliament. So I hope that we can regain the role of the Assembly and Parliament. In terms of oversight, nothing prevents us from asking questions. We have allocated money in the budget. How has it been spent? We are not told that because you come from the government side, you cannot ask those questions. We will ask the questions in a respectable manner, and we will get answers, because, by the way, Article 125 in the Constitution even allows you to summon anyone. And I think the issue that the President also spoke during his address to Parliament of getting a place where the executive gets to sit with the assembly in terms of the CSAs coming to Parliament on the floor after we amend the standing orders or in the committees, then we'll be able to get direct answers because we represent the people. Yeah. And if that is done, then the role of Parliament will be regained and it will have been entrenched better than it was last Parliament and even 11th Parliament.
All right, interesting. And the so-called opposition, if not then the minority, you have the confidence that theirs will be debates, that are based on, even if it's to counter with grounds, valid grounds for that matter, do not just cause trouble for the sake of doing that. Do not just come out to appear as though you are quashing this simply because you do not sit on this other side. Do we expect so much so of quality from the other side? And looking at the fact that they also would be getting cue from their party boss, that is the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who now appears to be coming out pretty much strongly as well in terms of, creating the checks and balances, or better yet, overseeing what it is that the government says?
Leader, my take on that is that still we have an issue because we have invested a lot of powers to the political parties. And most of the political parties has powers to twist the membership of the House into a certain direction. And you realize that, in fact, once probably we have a very serious debate of a certain either bill or a motion, then these so-called party leaders whips their party membership to at least align to a certain direction. And therefore, you cannot, even at this particular parliament, wish that particular route out of space. The other thing is that, in fact, you understand that, in fact, executive does molest this membership of the House in a very major way, and especially in the last Parliament. You really realize that during the last Parliament we have a lot of mountains, and you realize that there was a lot of de-whip, and this de-whipping were manifested on these political parties' powers. Then the executive was using the leadership of the House then to de-whip this membership. And therefore, the freedom and independence of members was not there. I expect that, in fact, William Ruto, as the head of the executive, actually has a lot of will and goodwill to the House and to the judiciary. And in this particular time, I have seen some light at the end of the tunnel, that, in fact, there will be no that kind of twist. But still, don't forget that, in fact, the other parties are represented in Parliament, where you cannot expect that actually we'll be having a win-win situation. You must also have those kind of element of political parties' voices that at least are brought into the fore by the powers behind the bars. Yeah. But I still believe that, in fact, this House will achieve a lot. Because first and foremost, the goodwill from the executives is what matters. And I still believe that the numbers also is another case. Because assume that, in fact, you have already have a popular vote of a president who have just elected, but with lesser numbers in the House, then can bloat a lot of issues. Because then the opposition can twist you. But in this particular case, I think things are okay, that the numbers still are in the favor of the executive. And therefore, I cannot foresee things going upside down. I'm still hoping that this will work well. But leader, I can tell you for sure, it could be difficult. You have seen a case like Nairobi County Assembly. We have a governor who cannot be able to manage to have a speaker, and therefore the rest of the membership of the House majority on the other side. And you must expect there would be difficulties because one, the governor has his agenda, and his agendas must have seek an approval from the chamber. Assume that he must be to talk this membership of the other side for him to get the right of agenda sail through. Yes, and therefore that would be the difficulties. Therefore, in Parliament, I'm not overseeing such difficulties, but we'll be facing such difficulties elsewhere where the numbers are in deficit. Okay, well, that's an interesting view right there, and as well, it should be known that
by the fact that the executive then enjoys the numbers or representation at the level of the House, then it should not be looked at as though they are coercing or they're trying to twist the members of parliament. And briefly, before we look at what is the main story, the millionaire hustlers, the Daily Nation, the Standard newspaper calls them that, the Daily Nation calls them a different thing, as well as the People Daily, and all these papers, they speak of these millionaires that are supposed to represent the hustlers. And you know, you people are part and parcel of the hustler family. And so you'll definitely are tasked, or you'll be tasked to defend this lady and gentleman that appeared before the vetting committee yesterday, and definitely those ones that will be appearing today, the likes of Kindiki, Kithure, and of course Ndungu, Aisha Jumwa, and Kuria, and so much more as to what we expect of this very government. Briefly about President Uhuru Kenyata, because as well is one figure that we do not overlook. The papers this morning speak of where he's going to, settle. But most importantly, what I'd love for us to focus on is the fact that the president, or the former president, graced the opening ceremony of the 3rd Ministerial Performance Review Retreat at Nigeria's presidential villa in Abuja. And of course, Uhuru was the keynote speaker, and not forgetting the duty that was accorded to him as to the question of peace of Ethiopia, perhaps that he did not manage to attend. Do you suppose then he's shaping himself, and he should be shaped for the African space, for the global space? Or should he just retire and we say that that is over and done? Because we also want to acknowledge the contribution that our forefathers made in growing Africa, that today we speak Pan-Africanism, we speak about the history of Africa, we cannot fail to mention the likes of Jomo Kenyatta, we cannot fail to mention the likes of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. But today, we lack that kind of leadership.
Linda, I believe that the new role that we see retired President Uhuru Kenyata playing is unnatural for leadership. And this is not just for Africa. Maybe it is time that we elevated it. And we already began this journey some time back with the formation of the peer review leaders under the AU. Yeah. And when you look at the past American presidents, even younger ones who have retired or exited the scene, younger than Uhuru, they have continued to play a role in the global village or in the global arena. That is the thing to do, because it elevates the quality of African leadership beyond the boundaries of their countries, beyond the regional blocks and beyond the continent. And that contribution is immeasurable across the globe. The fact that I wish I could see Uhuru succeed the late Kofi Annan in terms of the role Kofi Annan played, despite not having become president in the African continent. So we have space for such leadership, and I think it is unnatural for our retired president. I think the second thing is the fact that even as we went towards the succession, the question of the role that the retired president at his age would play was not just a debate among the Mount Kenya communities. Yeah. It was also a debate that was ignited by Atwoli. And therefore, that question has always hung around the issue of leadership in this country. Right. Unlike the proposal by Atwoli, where he wanted us to be inward-looking in terms of what role will the president continue to play in the leadership of this country, I think the new role is much more pragmatic. It is much more beneficial to the country, and it starts to chart a path, because President Ruto has assumed leadership at even a younger age than President Uhuru. He will therefore retire at an even younger age than President Uhuru. Yeah. So what then would role would he play at that time? Whether it's going to be 5 years or 10 years, in my view, it will be after 10 years. Yeah. But that question then, how retired President Uhuru takes up the space in the African continent and in the international arena will start to clear the path for the future leadership in this country. We'll expect to see younger and younger people getting elected to become presidents.
And perhaps that's what many expected when the Right Honorable Raila Odinga got this space as African envoy for infrastructure. And then suddenly the seat's still in existence, but not much of activity that we get to hear from this very end. What will it take for us to, craft a space and craft a niche for ourselves, at the level of the African continent, at the global space? Because clearly we really need to have that which we lack. We have seen the likes of, Kofi Annan, like you rightfully put it. I've seen the likes of Obasanjo. They are the very same faces that today will go to this country for peace processes, will go to that country to oversee the elections. But we do not see much of the Kenyan leaders in this space.
I think I agree with my colleague in terms of the role he's already playing. We also wish it to be more magnified in terms of the opportunities there are, not only in Africa, in fact in the globe, because he's the only retired president we have who is alive, really.
That's true.
And he is still a very young person in terms of age and demographics of the country. I hope we can be able to elevate. And I think in his term, the one thing you can credit him is giving a profile to Kenya internationally. We have done pretty well in terms of our placement in the globe and in the global organizations. So it also depends, Linda, on personal drive and personal interest, because you also cannot force someone to be something they don't want. So if you read the newspapers today, they are talking about where he's going to retire. He, in a serene environment, he wants to just look at wild animals. So it could also be his interest, because if you remember, there were some talks going on recently that he said he's not available to attend. So it also must come to personal interest, because you also cannot really push. But I think eventually, because we are a very young nation demographically, more than 70% are below 40 years of age. So we are talking of pretty young, we'll be going to churn out young retired presidents. So what do you do with them? I think it's also time we also think about it as a country, even in Parliament, whether we have a natural exit route to Africa or a natural exit route to a role that is now crafted to specifically be for retired presidents. But I think the acrimonious nature of our politics does not make it easy, because you'll find that after what we've had, and I think this one is a specific issue, because if you look at is a specific issue and unique, because the president was not supporting the sitting and the current president. If you look at Kibaki's time, he did not choose a side. He went quiet about it. But this one went out all out in terms of supporting the other side. So it also becomes very difficult to gel. But I hope we can be able to overlook that at this point. And I think I like that the president has already offered an olive branch in terms of having a sit down, having a role for him in terms of assigning duties. I hope we can be able to overlook, like we normally do even in our constituencies. Not everyone votes for me. But at the end of the day, when you're the member of parliament, you serve everyone. And I think that is why it's a secret ballot, so that you also don't know who voted for you. So when you get that off, because you really, humanity, the people you think maybe voted for you, maybe didn't vote for you. So at the end of the day, you have the reason to serve all of them. So I hope we can be able to bridge that one, so that we get past it, at least by the end of this year. Heal the wounds, and at the end of the day now, get a role that he can play, because I think he's still energetic enough. Even as he enjoys his retirement, he will be useful, especially in the foreign relations aspect, because he has done a lot of that in his time.
That he will retire honorably, as well as perhaps the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. We're not trying to write him off, because not then yet, there's not just yet. But then again, in terms of shaping themselves for the African, continent, for Pan-Africanism, this that they speak hugely about, we'd expect that the likes of Museveni then would say, enough of Uganda, and let's see how we integrate East Africa. Let's see how we work towards integrating Africa. Let's see how we get Africa to enjoy, to have a place and space at the global fraternity.
One thing, Linda, let me say that actually, as a nation, we have done it very well, because in our constitution, we have just crafted the manner in which the retirement benefits of an exiting president are in terms of gratuity and retirement packages. And that is very okay. But the other thing is that, in fact, even though the president enjoys office, idleness is also another factor, because he's somebody who has been always mingling and socializing. And therefore, there is need to be, at least as a former head of state. I think the laws that was purported by the president for the former head of state to take role of peace ambassador, I also think that that's a plus where the president can be able to move around outside the country and still have a role to play. And in that particular case, I would say globally, he has also made his own friends there outside. And there is no any single barrier for him to keep visiting outside the country and mingling with other retired president or even the sitting president. And therefore, one thing is that is an issue of age factor, because once you look to the age bracket, we have two positions which are very critical. Then this is the presidency and the gubernatorial, because actually they have a limitation which is clearly 10 years, no matter whether you are as good as what. And therefore, that's why you have seen like in Mandago have served there 2 terms, and because they are still young, they go back to Senate. Back to politics using other angles of positions. But as a head of state, you'll be demeaning yourself. You can still contend for a lesser position.
For gubernatorial position,
So I think the option is just,
can't even imagine,
just take that retirement and pave way for others. Because really, you can't fit even to be in that parliament, even though you wish to go and contend for any other position. You can't really fit as coming from the top. Then you are coming down. Even the public may not also give you such an opportunity.
Could this revive talks of adjusting the constitution as well, or amending the constitution?
In fact, recently, Linda, just to bring to the point where Honorable Gakuya stopped, we were debating the committee that is going to deal with IALA nominees, and one MP, Honorable Ngeno, said that IALA should actually be reserved for the likes of the president, the retired president. We should have statements like Odinga being fronted by ODM, Kalonzo Musyoka to be fronted by Wiper, because we can send them now to IALA and look at bigger issues than just the country, because it's not easy for the president now to come and run for anything else. And maybe with time,
the prime ministerial
and I think our constitution has gone all the cycles now, because we would have frowned to a governor going for an MP position. But this time, we have seen governors run. I mean, in Teso, we saw Ojamong, I think, ran for a constituency, which he did not get. We have seen them run for Senate and get, which is, we would have thought,
seen the Narok.
We would have thought it was unheard of. So I think with time, we realized in this constitution, there are many ways to actually go around it. And I was actually, when the governors were having the induction, I was one of the panelists, and I was saying, the issues we talk of devolution now are able to be addressed because we have even a speaker who was now a senator. We have governors who were senators. So the issue, we have had MPs who became governors. So it's a whole cycle. We have had people in the executive who serve now as governors. So I think with time, it will not be so unheard of.
It will not be a big deal.
It will not be so unheard
of. You will not be surprised to see this person
coming back and running as governor and even winning. By the way,
it will be interesting to watch. It will be interesting to watch. And again, in as much as we'd want to say, let's seek advisory, I do not see a space in the Constitution that bars that. And therefore, there should be an opening to the same. But then again, perhaps there's going to be a revival of a conversation as to whether then we incorporate the prime ministerial position as would have been with the BBI. Let's talk about these ones that are referred to as millionaire hustlers. And it has to start with you again.
And the question of the hustlers as a campaign slogan and tag was stolen from the proponent, that is President Dr. William Samoei Ruto, by the opposition. And they started to give it a new meaning away from the original meaning in which it was being used. Did the hustlers form government? Yes, because they did, indeed, the hustlers did vote in Kenya Kwanza and President William Samoei Ruto as their president. And that there's no bigger action in forming government than voting in the candidate of your choice. William Ruto was the candidate of the Hustler Nation. So that's number one. Number two, the people that I am seeing, that I have seen the president propose as part of his team in achieving the Hustler Nation dream are people who have engaged with the hustlers across the nation, across the region. Musalia Mudavadi was the team leader of the Hustler Nation in Western Province. The Speaker, Justin Muturi, was a team leader of the Hustler Nation in Mount Kenya West. Governor Mutua was the team leader of the Hustler Nation in Lower Eastern. And therefore, the question of the face of the Hustler Nation in government is intact.
Okay.
Number two, the issue of the Hustler Nation, as originally defined by us, was to give hope and inspiration to the ordinary people, the sons of ordinary parents in this country, that you can diligently pursue a dream to the top of this country and get there. Today, the people of Nyeri Town know that with persistence, they can pursue their dream. I am a living example. And therefore, the quote-unquote of the new definition of the filthy rich hustlers is a narrative that is being crafted, cleverly crafted, to shift and steal the storm from the original idea. Did Kenyans expect a person without a penny to become president of this country?
Definitely not.
Do Kenyans expect a person without a penny to become the chief CS in this country? Do Kenyans expect a person without a penny to become a minister in this country? Definitely not. The nature of our politics, the architecture of our politics, is that politics has largely, until this time, been a preserve of the haves. And the have-nots.
Perhaps there's going to be a change on that.
So there is that change. This new new cabinet brings in people with a lot of knowledge, experience, and time serving this country. Okay. And that is a natural. That is a natural. They bring in the kind of experience, and they come right from the foundation of the idea of the Hustler Nation. They are the best that the Hustler Nation could get in terms of being at the helm in achieving the aspirations and driving the agenda of the Hustler Nation.
Allow us to take a short break and then we come back on that very note.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Welcome back to the broadcast, and still with me, Honorable Members of Parliament. We have Honorable Martha Wangari, Member of Parliament of Gilgil, as well as Honorable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, and Honorable Duncan Maina, Member of Parliament, Nyeri Town. Emmanuel Kakai watching and ask Mheshimiwa, we saw the likes of Peter Salasia and Toto getting into Parliament without coin. Is the narrative changing somehow? Mheshimiwa, that should be yours to answer, but not now. Perhaps just to come to you, Honorable Gakuya, do you suppose that then we are focusing on the non-issues when we project and speak volumes to these figures that these nominees presented in terms of what it is that they own?
Read the one thing, and this is the truth of the matter. Once you have served in any capacity, whether you have been civil service, whether you have been in politics or somewhere else, even though you have served as an MCA, really, you must be a saving person. And therefore, at the end of the day, you cannot exit from that arena empty-handed. You must be having some, unless you are not serious in your lifetime. Read like now, I have served 2 terms in the former local authority as a councillor. I'm serving my 3rd term. Those are 5 consecutive terms. You want to say that I am still the way I was when I was elected the first day?
Someone is asking me to ask you, what is your net worth?
No, I am not going to go say here. But I am more than something. I am not
At least.
I am not others. And therefore, the figures that we are seeing here, actually, let us agree on one thing. Wherever you are politicians, not a single politician that actually wears one hat. Is that most of the politicians wears 2 hats. You have a political hat, and that you are doing something which is out of the box, because you have a side hustle, and probably that side hustle actually is what which making you even to be organizing your politics. Like myself, I stand firmly in politics because I'm well supported by business. Otherwise, if I could be only lying or depending on what I earn from the parliament, then I could be having 0 at the end of the day. Because assume every morning, every day, I am about to spend 50 to 100,000 a day. Where could I get them from the earning I get from the parliament? Unlimited. These needed things comes every day. You have barriers, you have hospital bills, you have all kinds of needs. Where, like today, we have no. Assume we have the CDF has not yet been dispersed. And therefore, we have what a clamor of what we call fees of students. And they are just knocking your door every morning. What do? You must do something as a leader. And therefore, what do? You just make sure that these students are back to school. By doing what? By issuing checks from your pocket.
And Mheshimiwa, someone is asking, and then they go back to school, and then they successfully clear school. Now, this is my own. Now, just building up to what it is that they're asking. They are graduates. They are well qualified. Why do we not see them in the list of these people that have been nominated? Is it a classic example of maskini yatazidi kuwa maskini na tajiri yatajirike zaidi?
One thing let me say. I cannot stand here to judge or to castigate
the picking of
no,
president.
The prerogative position of the head of state.
Okay.
Because appointment of cabinet is prerogative. And therefore, I can only discuss about the plate that has actually brought to the House as his nominees in these various particular positions. One thing I believe very well, most of these teams we are seeing here on the front page actually are the men and women who supported him in his agenda to win the hearts of Kenyans. And therefore, when they are being rewarded, we have rewarded the voters, because it is the voters which propelled through these particular images for the Kwanza to win the majority vote. We have seen people like Bungoma people who did very well to us, because surely I always say that we won our election at Bungoma, where we got over 250,000 votes. Really, you can't tell me that actually rewarding the people of Bungoma is not other business, but to make sure that the kingmaker who was there is rewarded, so at least the people of Bungoma can feel that something has been done. And that is how, and I can even say that in fact, there before, there were deceits of promises. Well, then you have a teamwork, that team make you to be at the level you are, and then you dump them and you forget about them. These, I am saying, William Ruto has done the best, because he has just honored the promises that actually the team that assisted him to climb to that particular office, actually he has rewarded back the community using the images of this particular team.
Well, interesting. Mheshimiwa, when you look at these people that appeared before the Committee of Appointments, and just listen to the interviews yesterday, and the things that are being projected, this in terms of the monies or what it is that they are worth, and the cases of graft, perhaps that's the reason why these questions of money or what it is that they are worth are coming to the fore, and are projected to these very levels, because we're talking about the likes of Musalia Mudavadi, much as he comes out to defend himself. The Golden Back scandal cannot fail to be mentioned. Anytime he appears before, a vetting committee, or any times he appears before people to be questioned on a couple of matters. And so when you look at this, do you suppose then, as of yesterday, these ones are likely to be given a clean bill of health?
First of all, I think looking at the headlines today is quite unfortunate. I dare call it just lazy journalism, because we had very serious issues being discussed yesterday.
Yes.
And for the first time, under this constitution, we have come a long way. I mean, in the years that Moi was president, nobody ever vetted anyone. In fact, at the glare of media, if you ask me, there are issues that were brought out yesterday in the vetting. I mean, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi brought out issues on economy, issues on economic revival of this country. If you listened to Justin Muturi, he spoke about issues of what the AG's position is in this country.
Well, which has a couple of matters that have been mentioned.
Yes, but the only thing that we picked is the net worth. No, I'm just saying the headlines, the way they are, is just the net worth, because journalism is the issue of man biting dog. And I think that is why we end up just projecting issues that are really non-issues for me. And it's not about saying this is small, because, I mean, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, his history is known. His father's history is known, even if just for inheritance only from his father. I think the numbers will not be far from what he has brought here. But we have now lost totally on the issues that this cabinet secretary nominees will be dealing with. Because we are looking at a government, because you don't run for an election with the aim of losing. Everybody runs for an election, including the president right now, to be able to capture power and be able to implement what you have already put in the manifesto. I feel bad that we have narrowed it down to just the issue of net worth, because at the end of the day, at least these ones can project. And Kenyans don't like honesty. By the way, they don't like honesty. So if they lied, or if they hid some monies elsewhere, say outside in the safe havens, they would like that maybe. Because if this is being castigated, then what are we talking about transparency? What are we talking about accountability? What are we talking about the principles of governance, that you are able to actually put it out there, how much you're worth? I mean, how many Kenyans can be able to do that?
It is one thing to say, but
how many
do you
Kenyans
suppose
can
these
do
ones
that?
would agree to a lifestyle audit?
Definitely. And in fact, they don't have an option. If you are a state or a public officer, you are supposed to actually declare, even ourselves, every 2 years, we declare our wealth because it's a requirement by the Constitution, by the way. So it's not even an option of would you agree. It is a question of are you going to do the work you have been pushed to do. But to the point, to my issue is that this team that has been picked by the president, it's not an easy balance, by the way. There are people even now who are disgruntled.
Yes.
That's
for sure, yes.
You can bet. There are people who are not happy because they were not in that list. Because when you have 22 positions to spread to what, 42 first of all, 42 ethnic communities, you want to balance 47 counties.
Yes.
Every county wants a CS. I mean, we were fighting for my county, which has never gotten a CS, like in history. It has not gotten a full minister. And for the first time, we have the nominee, Zach Njero, for lands, for the first time. So every county was pushing for interest. So to actually balance that is not an easy job to do. And I think the president has done a pretty good job. And I hope that if they go through the vetting, that we have an entry to deal with. I'm looking at the CS education. I can't wait for them to get into office. And I say this as a CBC mother myself, because we are suffering, my friend. We don't even know, is CBC going to stay? Is CBC going to go? Every day there are things to print, and we are wondering, if I'm having an issue to even buy a printer in my own house, what is that mother in Kawangware or in Bondeni in my constituency doing to actually, you know? So we are looking at serious issues to be dealt by this team. So we actually cannot wait for them to get into office. The president is already set. Even as in parliament we are set. We can't wait to get to the committees so that we are able to run these issues and deliver for Kenya. So I would hope that we actually give a better, incisive, even analysis of these nominees. Issues they talk about. I listened to Honorable Muturi in terms of the CDF. People think you are punishing members of parliament when CDF is not being released. I have thousands of kids now in Form 4 home for fees because we cannot pay. So what does that mean when there is no alternative? So he spoke about restructuring that and gave even a view of how that can be done. So I think there were better and stronger issues to pick yesterday from the start of the vetting than just how much someone is worth.
They've performed to your expectation, aside from, say, perhaps, alignments to the party, aside from the fact that perhaps these ones are being presented to us by our very own president, aside from the fact that we had representatives from both sides, vetting these nominees. Do you feel like they fit somehow? As a Kenyan, are you convinced that the few that you listened to and a couple of matters that
they are equal to the job?
I am convinced because I would look at Honorable Alice Wahome. She's now doing her third term in parliament.
Yes.
Has been in the women movement. Has been a lawyer. So because sometimes people think politicians have no careers or professional backgrounds, and that is why you'll find she even makes money in her legal practice because it's also legal business. So I think to crucify someone because they say they're worth 200 million, yet you have practiced law for 30 years, I think is not right and it's not fair. But I think the team is definitely equal to the task. Yeah.
Well, are Kenyans amenable to, softening up to the fact that, ours is a politics of money, that we now look at issue-based politics, owing to the fact that we have seen others getting into parliament today without perhaps using so much of money?
Leader, I am living evidence.
Okay.
I have been in politics for the last, active elective politics for the last 15, 16 years. Before then, people in my village can tell you I had been involved in community initiatives for 10 years earlier. My father was one of the first independence councillors in Nyeri town. He was the first owner of a Mutuba shop in Nyeri town. So I do not just come from nowhere. But at the same time, my father was not one of the richest people in Nyeri town either. The fact that we have the likes of Toto and Selassie in parliament begins to tell Kenyans that times are changing in terms of how we look at our politics. At no one time in the time that I have stood for election in Nyeri have I been the most moneyed person. People in Nyeri town constituents will tell you that I am one of the people who is very conservative. That I will tell you today, you want to invite me you want to ask me about school fees for your child? Let's go back to your village. The church where you attend, the women group that you belong to, the workers that you relate with, whether you are a Kibarua person, invite us for a cup, make tea, we are willing to come and share a cup of water. And every one of us, according to their own ability, we will support your child go back to school. Yesterday in the morning, and I spent just about 3 to 4 hours in my office in the constituency. Within 3 hours, I had the names of 247 Form 4 students. Candidates will be sitting their national exams that will determine where they will make it to college or to university or not, who are home. Their parents were studying outside my office because their children are at home while they should be preparing for exams. I have no CDF. I have come from a campaign. I have no money of my own. So how do we handle these issues? But the reality is that I gave them hope. And I told them, we will ensure that your children, even without money, will go back to school and prepare for the remaining 2 weeks to start to sit for their exams. And I later invited one of the chairmen of the boards of one of the bigger schools, Modwaine Secondary School, and the principal to my office. And I asked them, why do we all have to lose? Yes, Madam Principal, you need money to run the school. But now, these children are home, you do not have the money, so you still have lost. The parent has their child at home. He does not have the money, so the parent has also lost. The child is at home, they are losing class time. So all of us, we are losing. Why don't we have one of us sacrifice so at least the others can win? And we're having that conversation that, look, sending these children, even as much as you need this money, it doesn't benefit anybody. And that is why you have children who still have finished school. Some of them have attained grades that can take them to colleges and universities, but their certificates are in the lockers of in schools. So these are the kind of conversations that we must have. I cannot wait for these people to bring the names on the floor of the House, because I would want to know how Ezekiel Machogu is going to ensure that in the budget that he's bringing into Parliament, part of the money owed to schools over the years by young people who are now languishing in the villages, who lost opportunities to join colleges and universities, how this should be part of the debts that we should consider paying off as part of the pending bills to Kenyans in this country. This education should never be about parents. It should be about giving every Kenyan child the opportunity to go to school and attend school uninterrupted. Whether their parent is able to pay or unable to pay. We have very many children in our schools who are coming from who are total orphans. Others are having single parents who are jobless. So we must remove the debate about education from the parent and their net worth to the fact that education in this country is free and mandatory for every Kenyan child. So when the parent has paid everything that they are able to, yet the child is at home, the child is supposed to be in school by law. Who should be held responsible and accountable? Those are the things we should be focusing on. I believe these men and women have the kind of critical thinking skills, the kind of mindset that is connected to the hustler. I believe we are moving in that direction. I am convinced.
All right. And Mheshimiwa Wangari here speaks of, how it is a delicate balance to sometimes speak some of these, individuals and the names. It is day 2 of the vetting process, and why we are keen on this one is because we know that these are the faces that are going to form the executive. These are the determinant factors as to whether we forge forward as a nation in the right way or not. Eden Duale, Defense, appeared before the committee yesterday. Allow me to take this direction for a moment that is a little bit sensitive, but generally a direction that I've had people speaking to, in low tones. We are talking about regional balance. And I'm sure in your own groups on social media, and I know as conversations are ongoing, you've had people speaking of DPP Haji, EACC Tualib, DCI Amin, Deputy IG Gabo, Defense Duale. Are we focusing on non-issues, or perhaps if we are to look at the balance of region and the security sector, then one would be tempted to say that the president should have done some adjustments?
Read the one thing, and this is how personally I will respond it. Once you have what we call interviews at the end of the day gives opportunities by merit. So if the one who emerged the most qualified out of that particular interview by merit was pro that religion or so, should the head of state then hide his head and pick just somebody who was so much low in performance?
By design, they say that there are instances...
Just to please the Kenyans?
There are instances they say...
Because one thing, you realize that somebody by the DPP, he went through an interview. Somebody by the name, the IG,
I mean, yes.
then the DCI, all these are through interviews. And at the end of the day, the head of state has power to appoint one of the 3. And most likely, the fellow that was appointed was the most, was highly suitable. So how do we do in such a merit? Do we just demonize and just close that shop and say, because you belong to this particular region, then you don't deserve this particular region. And therefore, me, I will just focus on another way, and my take on this is that let us not focus on that route, that actually we are in fear that probably there can be maybe an issue that we can be in a what we can call a delete. Yes, because I have just equally of hand, like you have heard from forums, that at least probably even Duale and the Somali community have these linkages to Somalia. But I would say that in fact, these are Kenyan citizens. It's only that by virtue that actually they are being from that community. But it's a community who lives in Kenya. All the community in Somalia that lives in Somalia. And therefore, those more doubts should be out of the space.
Bigger than the doubts and the fears is the aspect of balance, which is enshrined in the Constitution.
In fact, Linda, yes. I am happy that for the first time, we have a minority now being told they have more things than they should have.
I know.
I mean, it's always my community. It's always been the Kikuyus who have been told you have more than you deserve. I mean, for the first time, now we are saying, I think the Somalis have gotten more prominence. I think we are moving in the right direction, really, that a minority, or what we would call a minority community, is getting prominent positions. I think that is the right way to go. Okay. In fact, it is better, when we were running this election, people would say, oh, it's a matter of Kikuyus and Kalenjins. I like that now we are talking, it's Somalis. It's actually something that is a good study that they have also risen along the way. And that's exactly the issue we are talking about, affirmative action. Because if you look at 20, 30 years ago, how many Somalis would you have said they were in a prominent position in this country? Almost maybe zero. None. So I think we are moving in the right direction. They are incorporated in cabinet. Even last cabinet we had a Somali. We actually making we're in the right trajectory. That any community, including how small it is, you can actually now be represented in parliament. I mean, for the first time, last parliament we had an Ogiek represented in parliament. So we are now encouraging even the young Somalis that we have. And by the way, in fact, it was Mohamed Harsi who said on some social media yesterday that, what is this Kenyan Somali? Do we have Kenyan Uganda? No. Do you have Ugandan Kenyan? Do you have Kenyan Turkana because they neighbor the north? I think it's time we just realize that we have the issue of identity. It is protected by the Constitution. If you're a Kenyan, you deserve an equal chance, equal opportunity to be able to get any role. In fact, if this was a Kikuyu, it would have even been worse than you're seeing today. But because it's a minority, I think we are making the right trajectory that anyone from any community in this country, when you qualify and you have the merit, you have the suitability, you are able to actually become anything that you desire. And I think if you look at this cabinet, there are very few people who I would ask you who their fathers were, and you know. Maybe just Musalia Mudavadi. Right. If I asked you who Duale's father was, you would not know. If I asked you who Muturi's father was, you wouldn't know. Same to Alice Wahombe, same to Alfred Mutua. And I think that is exactly where we are. That you don't even need to know someone's father to be able to be given a cabinet secretary position.
Right.
I think also, Linda, I don't think this is the first time that the Somali community in this country has occupied high-profile positions.
And during the point is that is not the high-profile positions that they occupy. It's the fact that, we're talking about perhaps the security sector. And we're talking about one sector. Kenyans maybe, or generally those ones that would question, would feel like, why don't you have these ones scattered across different sectors as opposed to one sector?
Let me see the dominance of a sector. But I believe during the late President Moi's time, there is the time we had the late Yusuf Haji as a Minister for Defense, and General Mahmoud Mohammed as the head of the current Kenya Defense Forces. Yeah. That was that not security literally at the very top in the hands of, again, one legion. And the question of regional balance cannot 100% satisfy everybody. Yeah. If we come to Nyeri today, it is the first time since in the past four presidencies that we do not have a minister, a substantive minister in cabinet. Even during the late Moi's time, we had Kibaki and we had Waruru Kanja. During Kibaki's own time, we had Esther Murugi and Mutahi Kagwe. Even this time, during President Uhuru's time, we have had Mutahi Kagwe. We've had the Minister for ICT. This time, Joe Musheru. This time, in the current cabinet, we have only the Deputy President in the cabinet, which is really not per se a Nyeri position. It is a regional position. It is a national position. But we agree that we could not all live to that profile, because at one point, as we have benefited in the past, there are other regions that have had no representative in the cabinet. And government is not only at one level. We have to agree that after the presidency, there is the cabinet, then there are the accounting officers, then there are the technical people. We are still in government. Of course, there is the pride that comes with having senior people from your region in government. At this point in time, as a region, we are saying at these layers that have so far been formed, yes, we can see that we have not gotten 100% of what we'd have wanted, but we still have the other opportunities coming. That is what I wish all Kenyans would concentrate on, that there are other opportunities coming for us to be in government, and therefore we will continue to urge our leadership and the president to continue playing this delicate balancing act and ensuring that there is inclusivity. I like the choice of the name of our formation, One Kenya, and I hope everybody focuses on that. And the election of the president.
I know you're thinking One Kenya Alliance is for the other side. As in One Kenya is the other side, but it's Kenya Kwanza.
Kenya Kwanza.
Yes,
Kenya
yes,
Kwanza. That's what I wanted to say. Kenya Kwanza. That we are putting Kenya first. We are putting Kenya first. And the election of Dr. William Ruto as our president is supposed to instill confidence that really you do not have to have one of your own at the helm of leadership for you to benefit and to belong and to feel included in this country. Yes.
All right, interesting. I want us to close with this one on the question of graft, because it's a war that we have to, address and we have to deal with. And not to say that the DPP's office is taking a different direction or a wrong direction, but perhaps to ask, is this the way to go? The latest is in the Gachagua 7 billion graft case that, people are asking whether it's on the verge of collapse going. The Daily Nation is asking, in a worrying trend in which criminal charges facing President Ruto allies are being dropped by the DPP. Well, the hearing of the 7.3 billion graft case against the DP aborted yesterday after prosecutors sought more time to review the case file, the charges and the evidence. That is a story that we find on the papers this morning. It's a story that we have carried ourselves as well. It's a story that is on page 6 of the Standard newspaper, and not forgetting the People Daily as well, without focusing much on the Deputy President, but generalizing this matter and looking at what happened last week. I don't know whether you were here with us, Mheshimiwa, when we were talking about that, but do you suppose that this is the right way to dealing with corruption?
Leader, what I can say is that we have a DPP office, which is
functional
quite an independent office.
Yes.
And what we should know, we should understand is that we are aware of where we are coming from, and we are coming from what we call political witch hunt, which every Kenyan has an understanding of this. And actually, none of the Kenyans who does not understand the mountains that actually we have been climbing, and especially those who are poor Ruto's side. And let me tell you, this does not mean that those who cancer billionaires does not live in this country. But you have not cited them anywhere in what we call the judicial process. This is purely to tell you that actually anybody who was being seen as pro or a supporter of William Ruto was witch hunted in all manner, and therefore most of the cases we have does not stand any test. And therefore the route that actually the DPP is taking is having these files and reviewing these files, and if in case he realized that in fact there was a pressure from the top just to incriminate or criminate these particular individual persons, then the DPP has every duty, every power to dislodge those cases. And the route he's taking, to me, is quite a genuine case, because it does not mean that we must stay to the judicial circles forever. If a case can be determined by the DPP and review it and find that actually the evidence already there does not stand water, then he has every power to remove the file and close the file. And therefore, the route is taking, and especially for some few cabinet members, are not really termination, but actually just a withdrawal of the file so that the files are being reviewed. But in future, we are expecting that those files would be either terminated, crossed, or return of those particular files back. But I can tell you for sure, nobody should decriminalize this particular process. It is quite a good process, because we understand where we are coming from, and we are coming from a very large mountain that actually most of us have been taken by the witch hunt of the then regime.
The levels of witch hunt and the conversations are revolving around that. Just who is corrupt? Because first of all, we have to acknowledge that money is being lost. We have to acknowledge that we are losing assets by the day. But every other person that the courts go for, or every other person that the agencies go for, will always say that they have been witch hunt politically or whichever way. Then we ask ourselves, just what kind of war are we fighting if everybody is crying foul, and then we're going to go round and round court cases without getting to the bottom of it?
I think the war on graft has never been an easy one. And I think over the years, we have made a good attempt in terms of dealing with it. But I also think because the political cases get more coverage, I think there are more cases for graft that have been prosecuted because at the end of the day, in fact, there is bigger corruption even at the lower levels, even at the civil service level, you know, at the public service level that have been actually been determined, even convictions actually achieved. But it's because the high profile nature. And I think that is what Mheshimiwa is talking about, that would rush before you even collect the evidence to arrest Honorable Gakuya just to be seen to be corrupt. Then you end up now trying to justify that I am not corrupt. But at the end of the day, what evidence do you have? Because prosecutions and the issue of convictions don't come from the streets. They don't come from newspaper articles. They don't come from just making an arrest. They come from the evidence. And the person who is the custodian of that evidence is the DPP. And what the Law Society, if you have followed that story, have asked and gone to court about it is that we are not saying it's okay to drop cases, but why are you dropping the cases? Because the DPP should actually give the reasons as to why, constitutionally, because you have the right of information under Article 35 of the Constitution, and that is what the LSK have asked. Why are you dropping the cases? These reasons should suffice to explain, because if there was just malice, then it becomes a frivolous case and it should be terminated, because what he's talking about also has happened. We have had executive use the office of the DPP and the office of DCI to prove a point. And at the end of the day, I will tell you, what that does, even for members who have gone through it, is that you may even get the issues withdrawn, but the dent to you and to your family, because it is your word against them. They say you're corrupt, you will spend 3 years or 4 years trying to justify, and every time you have an appointment or you have been picked or nominated for anything, that case will crop up. It is with you forever. So at the end of the day, we also must not kill the integrity of members of the committee, and not just politicians, anyone. And we have seen it happen even with civil servants. Because I can just not like you, Linda, and I say, you have embezzled funds, you've been asking for money. But by the time you defend yourself, it's already 2-3 years down the line. You're trying to get employment in another media house, which you cannot get because something is hanging on your head. So we must separate, and I hope that this term, they will run professionally. That you don't just run to arrest someone just for the show and for the cameras to click. You get your evidence and you're able to justify and present it to court. And that also applies to criminal matters, because at the end of the day, the collection of evidence by the police right from the bottom is what will actually make that case stand or crumble. Because at the end of the day, it is matter of a substance.
Yes, and I mean, it has to be factual when you present this to court.
I think there's also something else that Kenyans should also understand that in our statutes, even before these cases of the DPP withdrawing cases in court, previously, and it is documented, we have seen the Attorney General go to court and enter no prosecute on people who have cases continuing in court. So this is not something strange. It is something that has been with us. However, because this is the season for vetting, and this is the season for discussing leadership, it seems to have been given some extra prominence. However, at the end of the day, there is also the fundamental question that Kenyans, every Kenyan is asking. What faith should we have in the institution that is mandated through our laws and our statutes to prosecute people in court? Where does the question of witch hunt and vendetta stop? So that this is purely professional. This is purely on merit. It's on the basis of concrete evidence that can withstand scrutiny in both the court of public opinion and in the corridors of justice. So it is also for me an opportune time for us to have, as a nation, that debate, that can this office reinstill confidence? Because in the run-up to these elections, in the last 2-3 years, we have seen the prosecutorial powers become fully captive to the whims of the political leadership in the executive. It is time for us as Kenyans to say, this is not desirable for anybody. The people in the political class have the luxury of being able to put together the best legal minds in their defense. What about this other person in the village who is taken through the same process, yet they do not have powers to mount a defense? Where do they end up?
Valid questions right there. And you know, time is flying. We have about 10 minutes to exit the stage. And so as we come to a close, there's one thing that crosses my mind that I thought maybe I should ask you as members of parliament, because like you rightfully put it, some of these matters will definitely find their way into the House for approval if there will be that need. The fact that there's a proposal to have, you know, students that come from rich families pay higher fees. We're looking at that conversation of NHIF, and I'd not have had that, but yes, that is, you know, a proposal that is being fronted by key figures in the education sector. Magoha himself has alluded to this. What would you make of that? And you were talking highly about the question of education, Mheshimiwa, and so we understand that we have to get it right in terms of education. You've mentioned something to do with the CBC, and so to imagine that students from a high, you know, from say, you know, rich families should pay more fees than those ones that come from humble backgrounds would be the ultimate solution to this?
I think the issue of education, and I think Honorable DMM has also alluded to it, because we are talking a whole generation. So it has to really be a holistic experience. And I like the fact that the president has already put up a task force to actually evaluate, because it has to come from ECD level all the way to tertiary education. And the issue of differential treatment, I think, has always been there, because I remember when I was in the University of Nairobi is when the issues of even parallel students came into play. And by the way, that time, we were waiting for 2 years before we joined universities. Those of us who are going through the JAB or the Joint Admission Board that time, which has been renamed KCC UPS in terms of picking the students, we waited 2 years. But if you had the money, you had the option of going immediately. I mean, we had colleagues I went to school with, they went directly to the university after, I think, 6 months, when we waited for 2 years. They paid higher, definitely, because they could afford it. But those of us who couldn't, we had to wait for JAB and come and feel for help that time to be able to cover for our fees. And even in the allocation of help, that also plays. That is why you do background checks, so that we know how much can you be able to actually be given. Some of us would get the normal help allocation, but we also got bursaries, because they would look at your background. Personally, I come from a single mother family. They would look at total orphans. They would actually have preferential treatment for those ones. So I think it has always happened. It's only that now we voice it. And I think it has also come up because of NSSF, that you want to save. There are people with more capacity to be able to save more than those who are able to save 200 shillings. I think these issues have always been there. It's only now that they are being put in statutes, they are being put in law. And that law, by the way, must also go through public participation, because it is not optional, it is in the Constitution. And I think even the court cases we have seen, especially on NSSF, was about public participation, because they said you can also not force people to give more money without asking them, because they are the stakeholders. So the issue of public participation must come in. Even as we have these very good policies, they must be subjected to public participation. That is why, even as we craft the laws in Parliament, even regulations, I sat in the delegated legislation committee last Parliament, and if you brought laws, like I remember the housing one, we actually annulled them because they had not gone through the public participation. Because we were asking, who did you ask about the housing in terms of how much they would want to pay, how much they would want to be deducted in their salary, how much they would want to contribute, how did you get public participation done? So we will still ask those questions, and we must submit them, however good the policies are, to be able to be to align with the Constitution, because if they are not, they would be nullified in court at the end of the day.
Okay, and someone will always go to court.
My take on this, I would clearly say that, in fact, I do support in the area of NHIF. Really, it's a very key area, because education and health are two very key areas. And I can tell you for sure, it is injustice when I really earn too much and I contribute equally to that somebody who is a peasant. And therefore, I need to classify those rates are quite appreciable, are quite important. And coming to the area of education, the only area I would concede is that at the level of higher education levels, like these colleges and universities, we must give room for both the levels as they are before. Because if a student is coming from a well-off family who can be able to pay the parallel way, I think that room should not be closed. Allow that room also to take place, because even universities want also to get some to raise money, and they can only raise money out of those aspects. But there is one area that I can condemn, that we must strike a standard in our levels of primary levels and secondary level. At that particular area, let us put a standard. Let us make sure that there is no any parent who is going to be discriminated. Allow, because and especially in our primary education, actually it is a free education, and it's only aspect of feeding which comes in. And you realize that, in fact, when you find our student out of school, they have been forced out of school because of feeding, those feeding fees. Yes. And what I would request is that, in fact, this is what I have been, because I have that problem in my constituency, and I have called all the head teachers and I asked them that, no, we cannot discriminate students because of feeding fee. Allow the student, because they live from a very close proximity from schools. If the parent is unable to give the child what we call that feeding fee, allow that children that means to go home, eat and back, or else the parent can bring food to school so that particular children can be feed in school. But evicting that particular child out of school because of that fee, it's unjustifiable, and therefore we cannot allow that to happen. And at the same case, it is also important to consider that in the element of secondary level, we have two layers, because we have those who are in boarding and those who are in what we call the scholars. Those day scholars, actually, they are being paid for almost everything. It's only that feeding fee where most of the teachers have anchored the development money to. In fact, the development money should be purely from the ministry. Otherwise, you cannot force the parent to anchor other extra penalties just to tell us that actually that's where you normally get your development money. Therefore, it's a matter that actually I can't go easy with my principles. Because surely you can't tell me that actually you are putting fees in school feeding, then that's where you rely to get money. But actually there is one reason I was given by one principal, that actually those extra fees are just to pay those other teachers that actually the parents has hired. And I did ask, yes, can't you find another methodology of making sure that actually you'll be able to tackle the expenditures or expenses of those extra teachers, but not fix that particular fees within that particular feeding fee. I think because we have 2 United constituencies well represented, every member should tackle the shortcomings from his own area, depending on how the things are happening. But actually there are issues can be tackled, because you cannot stand to say that the developments of the school cannot be achieved. We have to have those developments, and still we have acute of number of tutors in the schools. Still you need capacity enough, therefore, to take the school on. And therefore, those areas are gray areas where a member of that particular constituency can tackle very well with his educational sector.
Well, amazing. And we also know that then this largely sits at the level of the members of parliament, education, and therefore it's crucial that you as well address it.
I think that line of thought and those conversations are completely misplaced.
Okay.
And this is my reasoning. The education sector, who should we focusing on? Is it the parent or is it the Kenyan child? Who are we educating? And if then we are focusing, as I believe, that the education is the right of every Kenyan child, irrespective of the parents' ability or inability to pay. These kind of thoughts, in my view, go contrary to our constitution. the provision for fair administrative action.
Okay.
I would wish to persuade right from the onset that the people in the education sector will have to apply their thoughts a little bit better on how we will adequately fund the education of the Kenyan child sufficiently from state resources.
Whether, regardless of where they...
Irrespective of where they come from. If then I am paying more for the same course with a child from a poor background, I am introducing class wars in the minds of the Kenyan children that I am more superior than you. If it was not for my parent paying more, you would have no chance. Those conversations are going to happen. It is not a direction I wish to see our country take. Our leaders, including Parliament, I'm urging Parliament today to ensure that we put in place a legal framework that allows every Kenyan child to feed in school, irrespective of whether they are coming from Kibera or they are coming from Muthaiga. Because feeding in schools has become a barrier to universal education, compulsory education, that the government is saying is promoting. When the child is at home, because they have been unable to pay the 3,500 lunch money, yet day secondary education is compulsory and is free. We are talking about 100% transition. At this point in time, when we have very many Kenyan children out of school, who should be held responsible? The parents have paid everything that they could afford to pay. The people responsible for that disenfranchisement is us leaders. We must be bold enough to tackle some of these issues. On the issue of NHIF, before we even go to the debate about money and financing, our biggest problem is the package that NHIF today delivers. We have confined Wajiko to the public hospitals. But nobody in NHIF wants to answer. After my mother has religiously paid her 6,000 and she goes to PGH Nyeri for her hypertensive medication, and the medication is out of stock, where should she go? Why should she go back to her pocket to buy medicine in the private pharmacies in Nyeri town? I am urging my colleagues here that before we do any other amendment to the and improvements on universal care, let us first improve on the burden that the ordinary people in our country are carrying from out-of-pocket expenditures. NHIF today, I see no reason why NHIF should not appoint franchises in Nyeri town, so that when we do not have medicine at PGH, there is a private pharmacy franchised by NHIF where my mother, with a prescription from the public hospital and her NHIF card, walks into that pharmacy, gets dispensed the medication, and NHIF comes and settles that bill like it would have settled if the medicine was available at PGH. Once we sort that out, the question of how to stagger the payments and get more people on board will almost automatically sort itself out. Today, everybody is asking, why should I continue paying when I have an accident and I go, I need a metal plate to sort out my fracture. I have to be given a prescription to go to Nairobi and go and look for this gadget. Why should I pay more? Or even why should I continue paying when I will go and get a prescription for a diagnostic test, for an X-ray, and I'm told this is not available here? The only way out is for me to go back into my pocket and pay for it. Yet I already have this current NHIF.
And the most unfortunate thing is that there are Kenyans who will tell you they've paid for years without having used the amounts, and so they think At this very point, when you direly need it, they should be able to serve you.
The good thing is that the honourable member will not need to urge us here, because even in Parliament, we already have a motion already running for school feeding. There are things we can be able to do by law, because we have the privilege. Out of 50 million, we are only 349 of us who sit in Parliament. And some of these things would easily be done in terms of legislation, in terms of interventions. So I would urge him more to actually bring the legislation.
And we're looking forward to these changes. Waishimiwa, thank you so much, honourable members. We have heard Honourable Martha Wangari, Member of Parliament of Gilgil, Honourable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament in Bakassi North, and lastly, Member of Parliament of Nyeri Town, Honourable Duncan Maina. Asanteni sana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reda.
Thank you so much for keeping us company as well. We do not end this in totality in a bit. We come down to you. That is through the help of our correspondents in different parts of the country.